Okay, so now we're going to talk about the limits of the noun phrase. Right, and we'll look at those examples to see how you can identify the limits of the noun phrase. Right, so the idea here will be to delimitate NPs, identify the head. We will not talk about embedded NPs. And then, more importantly, explain how we've identified the limits of NPs. Okay, let's look at the first sentence. An expensive sports car is parked in Bob's driveway. So the heads are car and driveway. The first noun phrase is an expensive sports car, and the second one is Bob's driveway. So how can we identify the limits of those two noun phrases? Well, the first thing we can see is that the first noun phrase is located right before the verb is in is parked, okay? And this is usually where you find subjects, okay? And noun phrases indeed do have grammatical functions in sentences, and they can be subjects. So if you identify the subject, it's quite likely to be a noun phrase. Now, the other element that you can notice is that the first part of the sentence, the subject, the noun phrase, first noun phrase, can be replaced with a pronoun like it. It is parked in Bob's driveway. So the ability to replace a group of words by a pronoun suggests that it's very likely to be a noun phrase. Okay, Bob's driveway, this time it appears right after the preposition in. Okay, and if you remember, prepositions are used to introduce noun phrases. So Bob's driveway is likely to be a noun phrase. Now, it also has a grammatical function within the sentence, and this one is called complement of the preposition. Okay, now as you can see, something else we can say is that these two NPs form semantic entities. One NP corresponds to one referent, and you have to include anything that helps to identify what we're talking about in the noun phrase. Now, let's look at the second sentence. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis was a figure of mystery. Now, the heads are Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis and figure. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis is a bit different from the other cases we've seen so far because it's a proper noun, and even if it's made up of 3 words, there's only one reference, so only one NP. And there's no head, there's no hierarchy in this proper noun. Now, a figure of mystery is the second noun phrase. Once again, we can see that it has a grammatical function within the sentence. It's located right after the verb. After verbs, you usually have direct objects, okay, which are NPs most of the time. In this particular case, it's not a direct object because the verb is to be, and so it's called a subject complement, un attribut du sujet in French. So a figure of mystery is a noun phrase because it has a grammatical function in the sentence, and this time it's subject complement. Okay, now the question can also be, how do you know that of mystery has to be included within the big NP, a figure of mystery? Well, because if you just stop after figure, then you cannot identify correctly what figure we're talking about. So of mystery is necessary to identify figure correctly, to build the reference of the noun figure. Also, if you replace a figure of mystery, if you replace just a figure with a pronoun, it doesn't work. You can't say Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis was it of mystery. Okay, so this also indicates that the whole NP is a figure of mystery. Now let's look at example 3. The house on the corner is new. The head of the noun phrase is house, and the whole noun phrase is the house on the corner. What you can see is that this noun phrase is, again, the subject of the sentence. It's located before the verb. You can also see that it forms a semantic unit. There's one referent. We're talking about the house. You can also see that if you replace only the house with a pronoun, it doesn't work. You cannot say it on the corner, which is another indication that on the corner has to be included within the NP. And a problem that students often have is that as on the corner refers to place, quite often students think that it corresponds to what in French we call un complément circonstanciel, or in English an adverbial, here a place adverbial. So how do we know that on the corner is not a place adverbial? Well, adverbials are used to locate, for instance, locate a whole action, a whole event. Okay, so it's used for the whole sentence. Now here, it does not refer to the whole sentence, it only locates the house, which is a noun. So on the corner is not used to locate an event, it's used to identify the house correctly. It's not any house, it's the house on the corner. Once again, it's necessary to identify the house, which indicates that it is part of the NP. And finally, let's look at example 4. The tall man who's talking to your sister is my neighbor's cousin. So we've got two noun phrases, two heads, man and cousin. So in the first case, the noun phrase is quite long, the man who's talking to your sister. And the second noun phrase is my neighbor's cousin. Okay, so in the case of the first noun phrase, as you can see, the structure is quite complex, but it actually corresponds to cases that we've seen so far. Determiner, and then pre-modifier, adjective tall, and then the head, and then a relative clause, who is talking to your sister. The whole phrase is the subject of the sentence, once again, so it precedes the verb. It corresponds to only one semantic unit. We're talking about a man. And you can also see that who is talking to your sister is part of the noun phrase because it's necessary to identify the man correctly. Now, the second noun phrase, my neighbor's cousin, is the subject complement in the sentence. It follows the verb be. So as it has a grammatical function, like subject complement, it's likely to be a noun phrase. And this one illustrates the case where the determiner slot is filled by a genitive, my neighbor's, and the head is cousin here. Okay, so if we summarize all the elements that we've seen that can help us to identify noun phrases. First, the definition. A noun phrase is a phrase organized around a noun. It is composed of several slots, remember, determiner, pre-modifier, head, and post-modifier. And it includes all the neighboring elements that are grammatically linked to the head noun. In other words, all the neighboring elements that are necessary to identify the referent correctly. Okay? As we've seen, noun phrases occupy a function within the sentence. They can either be the subject, the direct object, the subject complement, or the complement of a preposition. And finally, noun phrases can be replaced by pronouns, like it, he, or she. Okay, and as usual, there's an activity that goes with these questions. All right.